Welcome to an hour of HealthMade Radio. HealthMade is a community for natural health seekers where we educate people about common health conditions and share extensive research on the most effective natural health treatments and promote legislation that protects our health freedoms. A core concept belief is in the innate intelligence and healing power of the body, and if properly supported spiritually, emotionally, and nutritionally, it can find its way back to health. HealthMade Radio will bring information from integrative health experts throughout the world. Check us out at healthmade.co. Health is what you make it. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt, and I will be your host. Today's guest is Dr. Jen Meyers. Dr. Jen specializes in nutrigenetic medicine, testing individual SNPs based on the most important nutritional pathways to help support optimum health and wellness. Following her passion in research of nutrition and genetics, she is the Chief Science Officer and Master Formulator on 2 scientific advisory boards that are focused on DNA and nutrition. She also teaches physicians and practitioners how to implement nutrigenomics into their practice to provide a more personalized approach. Jen is also a board member of the Ancestral Health Society, which supports the study of health and health challenges from an evolutionary perspective. Her board certifications include biomedicine, natural medicine, oriental medicine, acupuncture, and clinical nutrition. She is also certified in genomics, nutrigenomics, and advanced DNA analysis and interpretation. She also has studied functional and regenerative medicine at Functional Medicine University, the Institute for Functional Medicine, and A4M. Dr. Jen, I'm so excited to have you on the show today because now we're going to be talking about the core of who we are, and I'm excited to see what you have to say about that.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Karlfeldt. It's great to be here. I'm excited to be on your show as well, and I appreciate you having me.
So since you're on the board on the Ancestral Health Society and talking about kind of how the health and health challenges from an evolutionary perspective, I'm curious a little bit of what have you seen there? I mean, what are some of the challenges that we're seeing on a kind of evolutionary that we're looking at now that maybe we didn't have like 50 years ago?
Absolutely. And we actually just had a really great symposium in LA just last week. And some of the things that come up are of concern for us and things that we study or we have, our docs and PhDs within our community that are studying is mainly about evolutionary mismatch, to be honest, is kind of the big core focus, whether that has to do with nutrition and nutritional supplementation, food, geographic locations, and how we're growing and processing our foods, the health conditions that we have now that maybe we didn't have or even were exposed to 50 plus years ago. So it's just the understanding of how we evolved to the society and communities that we are now and are in, and where we came from, and how we can go back to say, okay, let's study our ancestors. And this is why we also love anthropology in the study of medicine as well, and see where they were, what types of things they were enduring at that time, whether it's structural, functional, or even just from an emotional standpoint, right, that we can study as much as we can, and how we've progressed to where we are now, and where's that mismatch? Where does that lie, and how do we help progress?
And also, I mean, because obviously you have people that have evolved in certain regions of the world, and then all of a sudden now people are traveling all over the place and eating different foods, different environments, exposed to different type of nutrition in the dirt and different sun strength and so forth and altitude. I mean, does that then impact how we are able, the status of our health, that we are moving around like that and moving away from where our genes evolved, sort of thing?
Absolutely. And we've had some great research and presenters bring forth some information showing how, they've actually had to go back to their roots. They had to study their genealogy and their genetic SNPs and their DNA data to say, okay, where did I come from? Because what I'm doing now is not working for me. whatever that may be and however that may be for them personally, but it's not working for them and they don't understand. They've tried to do all the right things. They've implemented the DNA testing in the sense of nutrition and nutritional supplementation. They've done the blood work. They exercise. They try to be as healthy as possible, but something is just missing, and they've tracked back and actually have said, you know what, I've been living this, let's just say, ketogenic lifestyle, thinking that that's what's right for me. But when I go back and I realize, my goodness, with my heritage, that's actually not the best thing for me. And they go back, they track that, and they utilize and implement a more natural lifestyle for themselves based on their, original geographic location or their DNA or their ancestry. They realize they start to do better. And it might be that missing piece for a lot of people.
And so, because obviously how we are eating and how we're processing food and then creating food, that has evolved tremendously these last 100 years. How quickly do our genetics change? To be able to match these changes? Are we able to keep up with the same kind of pace, or does it take many more hundreds of years?
I think it takes many more hundreds of years, yes. I think we are able to adapt, right? Humans can adapt very easily to different environments within a certain percentage. And then I think there's a big chunk where we say, okay, it's like the 80-20. 80% is nurture, right? So the things that we are constantly doing on a daily basis to help support our overall health and wellness. That 20% is our DNA, is our ancestry, that part that we just have to learn and understand to help support the 80%. So I think we can adapt as humans, absolutely. But I also think that the underlying aspect, right, whether it's the functionality and the communication of the cells, whether it's the genetic SNPs and variations, understanding our new geographic location, like you said, the depletion of a possibility of soil nutrients and minerals in our soil, even if it's some different than what we're used to. I think that takes a really long time for our bodies and our DNA and our cells to understand exactly what's going on now and how do we implement a more healthy lifestyle based on our current surroundings. So yeah, I do think that takes a long time.
Yeah, and you're using the word SNPs. Tell me what you're saying genetic SNPs. What does that mean?
I just assume everybody knows what I'm talking about, right? Which is not the case. So SNPs are single nucleotide polymorphisms, right? They're those individual little ingredients that make the recipe of you. They're variations within our DNA passed down from our parents. We can either have nothing passed down from our parents that disrupt or change the way our bodies function. We can have one parent hand us down this particular variation within our genes that might change the way our bodies or our cells communicate, or we could get it from both parents. So understanding what this looks like for each of us just gives us a better blueprint and guide, so that way we can do what's best for us personally.
So with these variations, so let's say we have, so they're kind of like genetic weaknesses in a way, or where processes, because of this genetic weakness or this deviation, it just processes that should have been run smoothly then won't run smoothly, like how we detoxify or produce energy or control inflammation, those type of things. Does that sound about right?
It's about, yeah, nobody wants to be told they're weak, right? And nobody wants to know they have a weakness. But I always tell people it's a hiccup. It's a roadblock, a possible roadblock within a nutritional pathway or communication between cells that tells, okay, this is what we're supposed to do to go through this particular biological pathway. There can be a hiccup or a roadblock where the body doesn't properly do that, just like you said, and it can lead to different forms of acute or even chronic illness.
So what is then the benefit? So there is, I know there are ways, and I know the company that you're associated with, and also it's a company that we use here at our center, we do test for these genetic hiccups, but what are the benefits to test for them? I mean, if you're weak, you're weak. I mean, what would be the benefit?
Yes. No, great question. Well, like I said, for one, I don't like to be told I'm weak ever. That's just a challenge for me. It's okay. Well, how do I become stronger, right?
Exactly.
It's information.
Challenge accepted.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Head on. That's right. It's information to be able to understand. Obviously we know that each of us processes, absorbs, utilizes different nutrients from food or supplementation that we take, and pathways are very different for each of us. We can do it all right. I can do my best to do it all right, but there's something that my parents have passed down to me that doesn't allow my body to function properly within particular pathways. So therefore, I don't get the full effect of what I'm supposed to, or that pathway doesn't work as well as it should, and the percentage is going to differ based on you and your particular genetic results, and therefore it can hinder me a little bit, and I don't like to be hindered, So I want to make sure that I understand, what does this look like for me? It's not a bad thing, right? It's not a doom and gloom. We use it as a tool to understand where those possible, like we said, hiccups lie within the communication of our cells and within our DNA that control these extremely important nutritional pathways that allows our body to function at a more optimal level. And for me, I want to be 120%, 120% of the time. And although I know that's not always easy and I'm not perfect, if I can understand what that looks like for me, I can help guide and support where it's necessary.
I love it. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Dr. Jen Meyers, and we are discussing how you can maximize your genetic potential through nutrition. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Dr. Jen Meyers, and we are talking about nutrigenetic medicine. It's a really exciting and cutting-edge medicine to really kind of maximize our performance. So what I'm picturing when you're talking about weak genes, to me, I'm picturing, let's say I have two legs, and all of a sudden one of the legs only functions at 25%. I'm still able to get through, but I'm going to be falling behind on all my activities. So then we are looking at, in order to be able to maximize that, then we need to support that leg in certain ways so that it can keep up with the other. And maybe I can't get it to 100%, but I can maximize it to maybe get it to 85%, or really kind of do whatever I can to, so that I can get most usage out of that. Is that a good way of saying it?
That's a great analogy. Yes. I've utilized that in the past, as well as saying, for all those car people out there that maybe, can't understand that, although I think everyone can when something's not working optimally. How do we support it? And it's not a bad thing per se that, this leg is slightly weaker than this leg because it's not being supported properly. It just means now I understand some of these things that are happening to me, and that accumulation is what becomes a problem. The accumulation of all the things that you're not able to do as efficiently, especially inside the body, if we can prevent that from happening, or even to accentuate that process by supporting it properly, then the body runs more efficiently, right? We're self-healing mechanisms. We're supposed to heal on our own, but sometimes we do have to intervene. And it's usually that 20% or that genetic default that causes us to not be able to work as efficiently as we'd like to.
And
another great analogy is the car analogy. Like I tell people it's like putting diesel, gasoline in your Porsche, and expecting it to run at the utmost, and what you want it to do, the things on a daily basis you want this Porsche to do, it's not going to work the same. It's not going to run the same. It's not going to run as optimally, as efficiently as we would like it to, unless we know what form of gasoline to put in ourselves. The manufacturer tells us what type of things to put in our vehicles. Well, we should think the same way when it comes to our bodies.
Yeah, exactly. We got to figure out what kind of engine do I have, and what type of fuel would maximize the output. And that's when you do test for the DNA to see what engine do I have, how does it function? And then by understanding that, you then can understand what kind of fuel does this engine need. And I know your company, the Euphoria Science, is able then put together then a specific supplement that then help to match that engine to make it run smoothly.
Exactly. That is my favorite analogy to use, because I think most of us understand that if we don't put the proper fuel, that it's not going to be efficient. And I think we need to start thinking of our bodies the same way. We know more about our cars than we do our own bodies, and I think it's time for that to change.
And so what are some of the things that people can see in their own life when their genetics aren't working for them? I mean, what type of symptoms, health conditions? I mean, what can that translate into that they are dealing with, that if they optimize their genetic function, they would not have to deal with?
Absolutely. And I think the biggest one that we see, energy, loss of energy, not being able to do all the things. And when I say all the things, it doesn't matter what you do for a living, whether you're a physician, whether you're a stay-at-home mom. It doesn't matter what you do, but you notice throughout your day, my goodness, if I could just have a little bit more energy, I feel like I'm crashing at a particular time during the day. I do all the right things. I exercise, I sleep well, I eat well, but I still just don't feel like I should feel. I feel like something is still off. Those are kind of the start of the symptoms a little bit, some of them that we tend to ignore. You know, a lot of people tend to ignore those signs and just think, oh, it's just a bad day, or, oh, something's going on, I'll just continue on. Well, those symptoms and those slight feelings start to add up and accumulate and become more frequent, and it's more on a daily basis. Bodies aren't running the way that they should. We're not recovering like we should. Of course, we want to enhance how people recover, whether it's from pathogens, whether it's from exercise, whether it's from stressful situations. It doesn't matter. I just want everybody's body to recover more efficiently and enhance their recovery potential. So we start noticing that feel a little run down. Don't feel like we can keep up anymore. Don't feel like we can recover from things. That's when it starts to become a problem. And those things can lead into more serious health conditions. Absolutely. And any or all of them, I tell my patients, whether it's something from cardiovascular, whether it's migraine headaches, whether it's muscle fatigue and or not being able to have as much muscle as we used to be able to. I mean, all these things are the start of something more serious.
Yeah, and because when you're talking about energy, I mean, energy is obviously that's the raw power of the function within each cell, and that the body uses that energy to repair. And if you don't have the energy, then all of a sudden your tissue is going to get weak. It's going to be subpar. It's going to break easier. You're going to be more prone to inflammation. If you don't have the energy to haul out the garbage, out of the cells, or to bring in the nutrients, then it's like living in a house where you just don't get your garbage out. I mean, you have it becomes infested with rodents and other creatures, just like ourselves. We become infested with parasites and virus because we create an environment where disease just exists. So energy bleeds into so many different functions, obviously, within the body, that won't happen efficiently if we don't support the body right. Exactly.
And imagine when these cells are full of this waste, what is it not going to let in, right? Good nutrients. So we can continue to try to do the right things and take the right things. But if these cells haven't been able to, rid this waste and dispose of it as it properly should, because there's a lack of communication happening now, then yeah, it's going to be hard, rigid. The good stuff doesn't get in and the bad stuff doesn't get out. And that's where we lead to autoimmune, inflammatory conditions and things like that, digestive. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yeah, it's such a core aspect that we need to address in order to be able, and when you don't address that core aspect, then it leads into that ripple effect of chronic disease, like you mentioned, autoimmune, but we also know things like cancer we're seeing in 1 out of 2 people now. It is a metabolic disease, meaning that you're not producing enough energy within the cell, and then the cells start to turn cancerous. So, the energy component is so foundational and so key. So I'm really excited that developed a program to be able to address this. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Dr. Jen Meyers. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Dr. Jen Meyers. She is an expert in nutrigenetic medicine. So we're talking about how important it is to have optimally functioning genetics. And obviously, we only get what we get from our parents, but there are ways then to maximize what we get. And so tell me a little bit about nutrigenetics. What is that? How can that help us?
Absolutely. So nutrigenetics or nutrigenomics, it has to do with the effects of nutrition and nutritional supplementation on our genetics or our DNA or how our bodies function. We have these really important nutritional pathways that support a lot of cellular functioning, communication, energy in and energy out, how our bodies detox, as you had said as well earlier, how we control inflammation. We have genes that turn on inflammation at the appropriate time, but we also have genes that should turn them off at the appropriate time, those inflammatory markers. So if there's a hiccup or a variation within these really important biological pathways, things can suffer based on different exogenous threats, whether it's, lifestyle or, epigenetic cofactors that turn the expression of these genes on so they don't function properly anymore, whether it's stressful relationships, jobs, different things like that. I mean, we can't take away the roller coaster of life, but we absolutely can help the body remain stable and enhance how it recovers during these extremely important times in life. And that's what it's all about, is understanding how we can get the proper nutrients that are specific to you within those cells so they can properly communicate with each other and run more efficiently.
So, and you mentioned that very well, is that, obviously we deal with stressors all the time. And during stress, we will consume more nutrients and more fuel because we need to be able to deal with stress. We need to be able to run from the tiger, or as it is in modern day society, we just need to be dealing with people that are honking at us, or we get deadlines. All these different components that we deal with, and we then use up nutrients much faster than we normally would. And then obviously at that time, our weaknesses then become more exposed. So it becomes even more important then to nutritionally support those weaknesses. So then you can then use targeted nutrition when you know where your genes are weak. You can use the target nutrition to kind of really support them and kind of have that support structure around them to make sure that they don't break during the life, day-to-day stressors.
Absolutely, right when we need them the most. And nobody really thinks about that process. You very elegantly stated, thank you, until they're there, unfortunately. And it, it's like we try to tell people, we can't take away the life stressors. I wish we could. I wish we could wave the magic wand and poof, nobody has life stress anymore. But unfortunately, that's not the case. But if we can enhance and support how the body recovers and gets through these processes, because you said it exactly, it takes a lot of energy and a lot of nutrients and a lot of communication to be able to get over stress. I know people understand that stress can actually damage how the body functions, just stress alone. So imagine if we are stressing and then we're eating improperly because we're stressing, and then we're not exercising as well as we should because we've got so many different things coming on. It's just a snowball effect. So at least if we can come in and say, here's proper nutrients specific to you based on your genetic variations, that's going to help support you through these times of stress. And that way, when you maybe have to lag behind on the other cofactors involved in healthy lifestyle like exercise or eating properly, at least the body and the cells can attempt to run a little bit more efficiently, although you still want to encompass all that with it, of course.
And you mentioned something that's called epigenetic factors. We've been talking about genetic, meaning what we get from our parents. Maybe we get a weakness from one parent, or maybe we get a weakness from both parents, and obviously that's going to impact us more. But how does the term epigenetic, how is that different than genetic?
Epigenetic is the factors that turn on and off particular enzymatic functions. Every gene or every SNP or every variation is prepped by an enzyme function. And if this particular function is hindered, whether it's based on our lifestyles, sad standard American diet, lack of exercise, stressful jobs, environmental exogenous factors that we can't control, that can affect these enzyme functions within our body and turn these particular genes from being maybe not active or just working okay to either not working at all or working against us by working too much. So there's this fine line when it comes to be able to having the body be balanced. Once something shifts that balance off, that's what we look at for epigenetics. What is shifting the balance off, and what does that mean for you specifically?
So these are specific then lifestyle qualities, like how we deal with stress, what kind of food we eat, what kind of water we drink, if we exercise. These are things that then can impact these are epigenetic factors.
Correct. That can alter these enzyme functions that then can turn on or off particular genes in the body. And that's what we understand with some cancer genes, since I know that's what you deal with, and I'm so thankful for what you do. But just think about it. If we're constantly exposed to particular toxins, right, whether it's environmental, whether it's something that we are taking, not doing over too much of, whatever the case may be, then the body doesn't understand how to get rid of this anymore, right? It doesn't know what to do with it, so it becomes very toxic and doesn't let the good in or the bad out, and then it just metastasizes and spreads and becomes something that we don't know how to control any longer. And that's where certain diseases come into play too.
Yeah, so let's say that both my parents are diabetic. Does that then mean that I have to be diabetic, or can my working with the epigenetics, can then that maximize, or can I keep my genes moving along in the right direction so I don't have to be diabetic?
Yes, absolutely. Now, we're talking about type 2 diabetes, of course. Type 1's a little bit different, as we know. But with type 2 diabetes, we understand both of my parents, I have a lot of type 2 diabetes in the family. If we can then, okay, this isn't a curse, right? This is an understanding of genetically what my ancestors and my parents have given me or blessed me or not blessed me with. Now, how do I take control and make sure that I, too, don't have to go down this road? So it's just understanding that that's a possibility for you. We don't look at it as doom and gloom. We look at it as, okay, how do I prevent this from happening? And what do I do to support these genes that could lead me down this direction if I don't take those proper measures or those proper steps in life to be active, to eat better, to take the right nutrients, to do what it takes to not lead down that same path as our parents. And
so how many, because there's a lot of different genes that we have. Do we have to test all of them, or is it just a kind of certain section that is the most important that we need to look at?
Oh yeah, we have, well over 20,000 plus, different SNPs or those little single nucleotide polymorphisms that we could look at that are indicated of not just personality or physical traits. I don't mean that, but what we want to look for is those particular SNPs that are actionable. And that means something that we can support or do something about, with whether it's nutrition from food, nutritional supplementation, or lifestyle events and cofactors or things that we can help support it in that sense. That's what we're looking at. So we have discovered, and we have a database of over 300 SNPs where we can support and do something about through those different factors. And that's what we're looking at. It's not just the identifying markers, it's the ones that create or are created within those pathways that we can support and we can validate with science as well.
So testing more doesn't really mean that that's better, because we like you said, they're not areas that we can influence in any way, or they do not really benefit us by looking at them.
Right. Well, there's markers that identify what color my hair is going to be, or eyes, or my skin tone, things like that, versus ones that will say how our body breaks down and utilizes vitamin D into the active form, or our B vitamins. Those are the ones that we are looking at because we're saying, okay, we understand what's going on here. Now we can come in and support it with the proper nutrients specific to you. Don't we all wish we could change some of our physical features? I'm sure, but that's not the genetic SNPs or variants that we're looking at. We're looking at those actionable SNPs within those important nutritional pathways.
Great. Well, and I want to get back because I know a lot of people are like vitamin D, how important that is, and some people can take a huge amount and still they're deficient. I want to get back to that point right after this break. You're listening to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with a nutrigenetic medicine specialist, Dr. Jen Meyers. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Dr. Jen Meyers. And so prior to, we were talking about vitamin D, vitamin B, and how important they are and how you utilize them. So how can, for instance, we know that vitamin D does a lot. It's called like the sunshine vitamin, where you can, when you get depressed, when you have less sun, and also you can feel achier. And we also know that vitamin D functions like a hormone, so it's an actual hormone. So how can it be that some people then can take lots of vitamin D and be out in the sun and still they're deficient?
Yes, and that happens a lot. We've had a lot of people that have said, I don't understand why I'm in the teens or 20s with my vitamin D level, my blood work. I'm out in the sun all the time. That's all I do. That's what I do for a living. Well, so we get vitamin D from the sun, like you said, which is absorbed into the largest organ in our body, which is our skin. And then it has to go through a process inside the body. It has to go through the liver. It has to go through the kidneys. It has to go from an inactive form to an active form that the cells then grab onto and can use. A lot of people have a variation. In fact, a lot of people have a variation within what we call the vitamin D receptor gene, or the VDR, where they don't efficiently take that inactive sunshine or vitamin D and convert it into the active form that can be used and measured in blood work by the body. That's where there's an understanding. We're not measuring levels per se. We're not going to say, oh, you're definitely deficient. We're just saying, hey, you don't properly take an inactive form, convert it into the active form so it can be used by the cells as efficiently as you should. Therefore, it can make your levels lower. So that's what we want to come and support, is make sure that, okay, we see that there's a variation within that VDR SNP. Now let's give the body the active amount in the right form, specific to you. So therefore, we it's almost like I tell people, we want to trick the body. It thinks it knows better than us sometimes, but actually we find out that, we can go in and say, hey, let's do this the right way by taking the right form and the right amount. And that way it can be utilized better because, like you said, oh my gosh, vitamin D is so vital. It prefaces so many things and helps support the body from hormones and bones and depression, so many different things that it does help with. If we're not getting the right amount, it could be a contributor to those particular types of symptoms or illnesses.
Yeah, and what I love with this test, and I know you work for the company and a formulator of these different products. The company is called Euphoria, and you can get more information over at I believe it's euphoriascience.com. and then to kind of gain access, on my website for that, it's /TKC. So Euphoria, that's UFORIA, science.com /TKC for the Karlfeldt Center. So what I love about that, because I've seen so many of these different companies that test for genetics, and then it becomes this slew of information that you try to decipher for the patients and for yourself. And then all of a sudden you have to take this supplement here, that supplement there, and it just becomes a labyrinth that you have to kind of figure out how to get out of. And what I love is that it's a simple, just kind of cheek swab, and you send it in, and then you create then a targeted nutritional protocol or a product. So it becomes like one single product that then works on supporting these genetic weaknesses or hiccups or SNPs, whichever way, whatever you want to call it, and then help to support them so that when you are under stress or you're dealing with health and disease or dealing with weight gain or fatigue or arthritis or cancer, whatever it may be, that you then know that you're taking this product that's supporting my weaknesses, and I'm supporting the core, the foundation of who I am, my what I've been given genetically, and then I can add to that. But at least I've taken care of the foundational component, and that's what I really love about the company that you're working with.
Well, thank you. Yes, and that's exactly what it is. We don't think we're the end-all, tell-all, and I love the fact that you work with patients who you are recommending this to, but yet you can come in and then tailor other things very specific to them as well, and that's a beautiful, harmonious relationship that we are, of course, trying to obtain and make sure that we can keep a lot of people and doctors understanding what we're doing and why. We're not saying take this and life's going to be perfect, but we are saying, hey, we understand that we all have imperfections. If we can support them from a foundational level, like you said, the cellular, the genetic level, and then implement other healthy lifestyle recommendations or support with other cofactors, then if we can keep people from having to take particular medications or feel bad, that would be wonderful. I mean, that's the reason we're here. We're here to, and you are as well, which I'm so grateful for, to help people feel better. There was a poll that said, what's the number one reason why you take supplements? And low energy made the list, insomnia made the list. There were different digestion. The number one reason, people want to feel better. That was it. It was just a blanket statement of, I just want to feel better. So if we can give somebody the right tools to put them in that direction, then hey, we've accomplished what we want to accomplish, and that's amazing.
And this even translates, because a lot of people are dealing with weight, and so this even obviously translates. We're talking about metabolism, and genetically, if you support it, what kind of impact have you seen on people with weight loss?
Oh my goodness, we have such a plethora of amazing stories. The stories that people share are my favorite. One in particular that sticks out is a gentleman who lost over 150 pounds after being on the product for 8 months. It wasn't just the product. He also started to implement healthier eating choices and exercising and positive thought processing and all these different things that he brought together. And this gentleman lost a person. That's huge. And he's been able to keep the weight off at the same time because his body was going through this inflammatory response where it just was inflamed and it wouldn't let the good in or the bad out. So we had all these zombie cells running around in there. His body wasn't functioning properly. He didn't have the energy to exercise. He almost just didn't care about what he ate because nothing made him feel better either way. But when he started to take what his body needed in proper fueling, which is nutritional supplementation, and started to say, you know what, I'm going to do better, his body completely changed. It was incredible to see. It's still incredible to talk about. We saw him at the event, and it was great. So people can change. We've seen it all the time. Again, it's not the end-all, tell-all. Having you there to help support your patients and other providers to help support their patients, and having other healthcare, it doesn't matter what your field or specialty is, or even just an individual person. It just kind of helps put you in the right direction, so you know that you're not taking hundreds of dollars of supplements that you're not sure if they're appropriate for you or not. And that's what it boils down to, is taking away blind nutrition, being able to be specific to that person in particular, so that way they can then say, okay, I can do all these other things, and I should be very well supported while I'm taking the proper nutrients as well.
And what's so great is that when you do the DNA test, in addition to obviously to have a individualized supplement that becomes tailored specifically for you, your genetic makeup, you also then find out, what kind of foods can I find these nutrients and these substances in that will also support my genetic makeup. So there you have then looking at the nutrigenomic, looking at, what kind of nutrition do we have in plants and foods, and that can then support our genetics. So that's what I love about it. So it becomes that practical piece as well. I'm curious though. So here we had a gentleman. Obviously, he took the supplements, and that kind of maximizes genetic function, and also worked, and that will help to reduce the inflammation. So a lot of people with gut inflammation and other type of inflammation, when you support your genetics, then the inflammation will then start to reduce. But have you had people that, let's say, they didn't do any change whatsoever, and they started taking the supplement that relates to their genetic, and they would just lose weight based on that?
We actually did. We had a young lady who tried it all, who went vegan, who did all the different lifestyle choices, not really sure what was going to work for her. She was just desperate. So she started taking the supplementation. She started taking her Euphoria, her personalized, tailored supplementation. And she said her terms, the weight just melted off me. I just started noticing I just kept losing weight in a healthy way, of course, but losing weight. Each week I would get on the scale and I'd be down 5+ pounds. She lost a total of over 90 pounds herself. And she said she didn't do anything different. She didn't increase her exercise. Of course, she felt better and wanted to, but she purposely did not do anything because she wanted to see what this product would do for her. And of course, as we know, individual results are going to vary. Everybody's going to experience something different from this. But she did experience a lot of weight loss just because her body was not holding on to this inflammation. She wasn't holding on to this waste anymore. Her body was able to process things the way that it was supposed to.
That's incredible. So 90 pounds just with this alone, just by maximizing your genetic makeup.
Exactly. And like I said, individual results vary, of course. We know that everybody's going to experience something different, but these are some stories that just stick out to me because they've just been amazing to hear. It's not an everyday occurrence per se, but to hear these stories and to hear them over and over and over again has been incredible. It's why we get up and do what we do every day.
And there's also an aspect of the genetic test. So you can do the genetic test just for kind of your wellness, your overall wellness, but then there's also a test where you can test the genes that relate to weight loss, right?
Yes, and these people just did the foundation one, both of those people. With our weight loss one, we have heard some incredible results as well. This targets more of insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, so how we process sugars, how we get insulin into the cells so it's sensitive and not resistant, energy expenditure, looking at dopamine receptors, people who eat for, just because they get this benefit of feeling good, because we know that sugar is just as addictive as some certain drugs. They've proven that with functional MRIs. But to be able to look at different functions of the body and understand how is it possible for somebody to try everything and not be able to lose a pound, what can we do to come in and help support the body better so they break these fats and these carbohydrates and different things down more efficiently and use it for energy instead of storing it?
And how is this test different? Because a lot of times, when you ask a patient if you've done genetic testing and say, yeah, I know that I have a genetic SNP for MTHFR, and that tends to be kind of the golden child, so to say, for genetic testing. Is it just MTHFR? Do I have a SNP that impacts my methylation, which is what the MTHFR, which is just kind of a funny name for a gene, but anyway. So how is this different? I mean, is this what this does, or is it more than that? We're testing.
It's so much more than that. And you and I have had a great discussion about certain things as well. But, MTHFR is the most researched SNP or gene. It is researched a lot. There are two very heavy hitter or strong variations of this particular SNP. So hopefully they're looking at both of those. But the methylation pathway is a very large pathway. So just to look at one SNP in particular, for me, doesn't cut it. I want to look at more SNPs within that pathway. And then I also want to look at things that will affect, if that pathway doesn't work the way that it's supposed to, what else is going to be affected by that? We don't think that everything is so connected. And if I can take a test where I look at, I can't test all the SNPs, boy, don't I wish I could sometimes, but at least look at the heavy hitters within those particular pathways to see how they're being affected, we can start to put these things together to create a metabolism and metabolic pathways and biological pathways that work more efficiently to keep cellular communication, more defined in the sense of this is the way it's supposed to work. So it's looking at not only one individual SNP, but also pathways that feed off of each other and that communicate with each other to have the body work as a whole. We are whole systems. We are not parts. And therefore, I want to make sure the system as a whole is working as efficiently as possible.
So in essence, I mean, because a lot of people just get hyper-focused on, do I have a dysfunction and the MTHFR area? And by hyper-focusing on that, then you're missing, like you're saying, there's a whole big picture around that, and they all work together. And so you need to look at them as a whole and address them as a whole. And if you don't do that, you give the individual can really run into trouble.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like thinking my back hurts, but the MRIs and X-rays say that my back is normal. So my back hurts, but I don't know why. Well, let's just hyper-focus on the back. Well, what if there's something? What if it's being referred to that particular area, but it's somewhere else that's hurting? Or there's some neurological or nerve damage that's happening that could be causing, referred pain to that particular area. It's looking at everything as a whole and saying, okay, it has to function as a whole. We communicate with every other body system and organ and part and tissue and everything else. Why don't we start with foundation, which is usually methylation, but then we also need to look at the other pathways as well, because we could fix methylation, but that doesn't mean that mitochondria is going to work as well as it should, or detoxification is. So just understanding we work as a whole, which is why I love all these different holistic medicines, and being able to support the body as a whole versus a piece.
And how does Euphoria, and again, if people want more information, they can go to euphoriascience.com, and my website in this is /TKC. But yeah, Euphoria, that's UFORIA science.com /TKC. How does Euphoria differ from like 23andMe? I mean, because that's what a lot of people do.
Absolutely. So 23andMe was a great door opener for a lot of us, post-human, Human Genome Project, and they look at a bunch of different variations of SNPs. They look at characteristic ones, they look at disease-based, they look at nutritional, they look at the whole the whole picture, I guess. I'd rather it be more specific to helping people function better, but they don't give you the solution, right? So here's the information. Now, what do you do about it? Where with Euphoria, we're not also exposing the possibility of being related to somebody that maybe we don't want to know about. That's a different thing. But what we are doing is looking and saying, we just want to look at these targeted biological or nutritional pathways so that we can come in and then say, okay, here are your hiccups or your variations. Now let's help you support it. Instead of you going out there and guessing and saying, okay, I think this is the amount I need to take. I think this is a good supplement. We are taking that completely off of the table for you and saying, not only should you take this particular supplement, but based on your variation, this amount and this form that's actually very specific to you. And guess what? You don't have to take hundreds and hundreds of dollars in supplements each month. You don't have to remember to take all these different things and carry them around with you. We're going to do our best to package it into 1 month that's made fresh for you, compounded every single month specific with your name on it. That way you know that you are taking what's appropriate based on those particular nutritional SNPs that we are looking at.
And when you're saying the specific form, we're talking about vitamin D, but also something like CoQ10 that's so vital for everybody. There are different forms of CoQ10, and which one is the one that is appropriate for you? It may be, just to go and get something off the shelf, it may not be the correct one. So with this testing, you then find out what is the appropriate one and also the appropriate quantity. And I think that's incredible.
And I love that you brought up CoQ10. That's my favorite example. We all need CoQ10. But how do we know which form of it, based on what our body is capable of doing, is the unknown part? Do I need ubiquinol, ubiquinone? Which form do I need? Well, we can look at that and say, hey, you know what? You need ubiquinol, or you need ubiquinol and ubiquinone, and in this particular dosage. So that's something that most people don't understand is there's so many different variations of an active form of something, but what your body needs specifically is hard to guess at until you actually have the information available. Then we can give you that particular form and whichever dosage is appropriate for you, and you don't have to guess. It's quite awesome, actually.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. Jen, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show, and it's such vital information, especially nowadays when we're dealing with nutritional deficiencies. We're dealing with higher amount of stress than we've ever dealt with. Mm-hmm. We're dealing with more toxins, chemicals, and then to maximize our genetic potential becomes even more important. So thank you for the important work that you're doing.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for doing what you're doing. I love what you guys are doing over there. So thank you so much for having me be a part of this.
Well, thank you so much. That is it for today. You're listening to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. Remember, check us out at healthmade.co. Health is what you make it. 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 Health is what you make it.